Have you ever thrown away a rough stone, only to realize later it was an uncut diamond worth more than your entire life? Liam thought he was trading up. He thought Oprah was plain, boring, and easily replaceable. He wanted a woman with status, a name that opened doors. So, he discarded her like yesterday's trash. But he didn't know the secret Oprah had been hiding for 3 years. He didn't know that the woman scrubbing his dishes was the sole heiress to a $1 trillion dynasty that owned the very bank he worked for. This is the story of a man who sold his soul for fool's gold, and the woman who bought it back just to crush him. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean, it just made the grime slicker. That's how Liam felt as he sat in the booth of Joe's Diner, the vinyl seat cracked under his tailored navy suit. He checked his Rolex, a knockoff, though a very good one, and tapped his fingers impatiently against the laminate table. Across from him sat Oprah. She looked tired. She always looked tired these days. She was wearing that beige cardigan he hated, the one with the fraying cuff, and her brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun. She was nursing a lukewarm tea, her large, doe eyes fixed on him, with a confusion that irritated him more than it should have. "Liam," she said softly, her voice raspy from a double shift at the city archive. "You said it was urgent. Is everything okay? Is it your mom?" Liam sighed, a sound practiced to convey burden rather than boredom. "No, Oprah. My mother is fine. It's us. We're not fine." Oprah froze. The spoon in her hand clinked against the ceramic mug. "What do you mean?" "I mean, look at this." Liam gestured vaguely at the diner, at her, at the space between them. "I'm moving up, Oprah. I just secured the account for the Kensington merger. I'm going to be a vice president at Stratton Oakmont within the year. I have a trajectory." "I know," Oprah smiled, though it was weak. "I'm so proud of you. I bought a bottle of that sparkling wine you like to celebrate tonight." "Stop," Liam cut her off, his voice cold. "That's exactly it. Sparkling wine, coupon clipping, staying in on Fridays to watch reruns. It's small, Oprah. You're small." The insult hung in the air, heavier than the smell of grease and old coffee. Oprah blinked, her face paling. "I'm saving money so we can buy a house, Liam. I'm working 2 jobs." "And that's the problem," Liam snapped, keeping his voice low but venomous. "You're a worker. A drudge. I need a partner, Oprah. Someone who understands the world I'm entering. I need someone who can walk into a gala and turn heads, not someone who looks like they're there to serve the hors d'oeuvres." He reached into his pocket, not for a ring, but for a check. He slid it across the table. It was for $5,000. "What is this?" Oprah whispered, staring at the paper as if it were radioactive. "Severance," Liam said, devoid of irony. "For the rent, I'm breaking the lease. I'm moving into the penthouse at the Four Seasons Residences next week. Jessica has a place there." Oprah's head snapped up. "Jessica? Jessica Thorne? The intern?" "She's not an intern anymore," Liam corrected, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "And her father is on the board of directors. She gets me, Oprah. She has ambition. She has a name." Oprah looked at the check, then back at Liam. For a second, Liam expected tears. He expected begging. He had rehearsed his rejection of her pleas. But Oprah didn't cry. Her expression shifted from confusion to a strange, terrifying calm. It was a look he had never seen in the 3 years they had lived together in that cramped one-bedroom apartment. "You're leaving me because I don't have a name?" Oprah asked, her voice steady. "It's not just that," Liam deflected, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "It's about fit. We don't fit. You're a Honda, Oprah. Reliable, sure. But I'm in the market for a Ferrari. Keep the money. You'll need it." He didn't look back as he walked out of the diner. He stepped into the rain, feeling lighter, free of the dead weight. He pulled out his phone and dialed Jessica. "It's done," he said, a grin breaking across his face. "I'm on my way. Champagne? Real champagne this time. Dom Perignon." Inside the diner, Oprah sat motionless. She didn't touch the check. She slowly reached into her worn tote bag and pulled out an old, black flip phone, a burner she kept buried at the bottom. She dialed a number she hadn't called in 5 years. The line clicked open on the first ring. Miss Serafina? A British voice answered. It was Arthur, the head of security for the chaotic, sprawling empire of the Rothschild family. Arthur, Oprah said, her voice changing. The rasp was gone, replaced by a clipped, aristocratic, icy tone that Liam had never heard. He's gone. You can send the car, the rolls. And Arthur? Yes, miss? Tell grandmother she was right. Poor people are tedious. I'm ready to take my seat at the table. 3 months had passed since the day at the diner. For Liam, they were the best 3 months of his life, or so he told himself every time he looked in the mirror of the bathroom he now shared with Jessica Thorne. Life with Jessica was fast. It was loud. It was expensive. They spent weekends in the Hamptons at her father's estate, drinking gin and tonics with men who owned islands. Liam felt like he had finally arrived. He was no longer just an associate. He was Jessica Thorne's boyfriend. That title carried weight, but it was also exhausting. Jessica wasn't like Oprah. She didn't make him coffee in the morning. She screamed at the maid if her latte wasn't 104 degrees. She didn't listen to him vent about his day. She interrupted him to talk about which influencers were at the club last night. Liam, are you listening? Jessica snapped, snapping her manicured fingers in front of his face. They were at Le Bernardin, one of the most expensive restaurants in New York. Liam blinked, pulling his focus back. Sorry, babe. Just thinking about the merger. Well, stop thinking and start networking, she hissed, gesturing with her wine glass toward a table in the corner. Do you know who that is? That's chaotic wealth right there. That's Mr. Sterling's personal attorney. Liam looked. He saw a gray-haired man, eating quietly. So? So, Jessica rolled her eyes. The Sterling Gala is next week. It's the event of the decade. Everyone who is anyone will be there. My dad says he can get us tickets, but we need to be on the list for the Inner Circle VIP room. That's where the real deals happen. The Sterling Gala. Liam had heard the rumors. It was a charity event, hosted by the Shadow Board, a group of investors so wealthy they didn't appear on Forbes lists because they paid to keep their names off them. I'll handle it, Liam said, adjusting his tie. He felt a surge of arrogance. He was a rising star. He had discarded his past. He could handle anything. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, the atmosphere was very different. In a private wing of the Ritz Paris, a woman stood on the balcony, overlooking the Place Vendôme. She wore a silk dressing gown that cost more than Liam's entire year of rent. Her hair, no longer in a messy bun, fell in lustrous, polished waves down her back. The acquisition of Stratton Oakmont is nearly complete, Miss Serafina, a man in a sharp suit, said from the doorway. He held a tablet. We have acquired 51% of the controlling shares through the shell companies in the Caymans. The board is unaware. Serafina, formerly Oprah, turned. Her face was harder now. The softness Liam had mocked was gone, replaced by the steel of a woman raised to rule empires. And the personnel files? She asked. Reviewed. We have flagged the employees for the restructuring. Liam Carter is on the list for promotion to VP, pending the board's approval. Serafina walked into the room and took the tablet. She stared at Liam's digital face. He looked smug in his corporate headshot. Leave him, she said quietly. The advisor looked surprised. Leave him? But ma'am, the instructions were to purge inefficient assets. Oh, he is inefficient, Serafina smiled, a cold, dangerous expression. But firing him is too easy. He wants to be a vice president? Let him. He wants to go to the Sterling Gala? Ensure he gets an invitation. In fact, give him a front row seat. I don't understand, the advisor admitted. Liam loves heights, Arthur, Serafina said, walking over to a table where a diamond necklace lay the Coeur de la Mer, a piece of jewelry rumored to be lost at sea, now resting casually on her vanity. He loves to climb. I want him to climb so high that when I kick the ladder out from under him, he has plenty of time to think about his mistake on the way down. She picked up the necklace. Is everything ready for my return to New York? Yes, Miss Rothschild. The private jet is fueled. The press release is drafted. The world thinks the Rothschild heiress has been in a Swiss clinic for 3 years. They are expecting a fragile girl. Serafina clasped the diamonds around her neck. They felt cold against her skin. They are expecting a victim, she corrected. What they are going to get is a queen. Make sure Liam's invitation is delivered by courier. Hand-delivered. I want him to feel special. The invitation arrived at Liam's desk on a Tuesday. It wasn't just an envelope. It was a heavy, velvet-lined box. Inside, resting on black satin, was a gold-plated card engraved with the words, "The Sterling Foundation requests the honor of your presence at the Winter Solstice Gala. Admit 2. VIP, Table 4. Liam stared at it, his heart hammering against his ribs. Table 4. Single digits. That meant he wasn't just in the room. He was near the front. He was near the power. Nice. A voice sneered from the next cubicle. It was Brad, his rival for the VP spot. Who did you have to kill to get that? Talent, Brad. Liam smirked, shutting the box. Pure talent. And connections. He immediately texted Jessica, "We're in. Table 4. Start shopping." That evening, Jessica was ecstatic. But her excitement was purely selfish. Table 4? My dad is at table 12. Oh my God. Liam, do you know who sits at the single digits? The royal families? The oil tycoons? The Rothschilds. The Rothschilds? Liam laughed as he poured himself a drink. They're old news. Dust and bones. You idiot, Jessica snapped. They own half the central banks in the world. There's a rumor that the granddaughter, Serafina, is coming out of hiding. She's the sole heir. If she's there, Liam, if you can get a FaceTime with her, you're not just looking at VP, you're looking at CEO. Liam swirled his whiskey. The ambition was a drug, and he was overdosing. Watch me, he said. I can charm anyone. I charmed you, didn't I? Jessica gave him a look that wasn't quite love. It was appraisal. Don't screw this up. I bought a dress that costs more than your car. And I, Liam said, checking his reflection in the window, am going to buy a tuxedo that makes James Bond look homeless. He felt invincible. He thought about Oprah for a fleeting second, a brief image of her in that fraying cardigan. He chuckled. She's probably clipping coupons for cat food right now, he thought, while I'm about to dine with kings. He had no idea that the king he was preparing to meet was actually the queen he had thrown away. The day of the gala arrived. New York City was buzzing. The Plaza Hotel was cordoned off by NYPD. Limousines stretched for 6 blocks. Liam stepped out of the black SUV, Jessica on his arm. She looked stunning, in a red Vera Wang gown, though her smile was tight, practiced for the paparazzi. Liam adjusted his cuffs. The flashbulbs popped, blinding white light exploding around them. Name? A security guard, with an earpiece, asked at the entrance. He wasn't looking at a list. He was scanning retinas. Liam Carter. And guest. The scanner beeped green. Welcome, Mr. Carter. You are expected. They walked onto the red carpet. The air smelled of expensive perfume and money. Look, Jessica whispered, gripping his arm tightly. That's the Duke of Westminster. And there's Elon. Liam nodded, trying to look bored. Standard crowd. But inside, he was shaking. The ballroom was transformed into a winter wonderland of ice sculptures and white roses. It was breathtaking. They made their way to table 4. It was right next to the stage. The table was set with gold cutlery. There were only 2 other seats at the table, currently empty. Who are we sitting with? Jessica hissed, checking the place cards. The cards were blank. Someone important, Liam said, taking his seat. He felt like a king on a throne. Suddenly, a hush fell over the room. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the top of the grand staircase. Ladies and gentlemen, the master of ceremonies announced, his voice booming. Please welcome the chairwoman of the evening, the new majority owner of the Global Banking Consortium, Miss Serafina Rothschild. Liam clapped politely, craning his neck to see. Rothschild, he whispered to Jessica. Here comes the money. A woman stepped into the light. She was wearing a gown of midnight blue velvet, encrusted with diamonds that shimmered like stars. Her hair was swept up in a regal crown. She moved with a grace that made the air seem to part around her. She began to descend the stairs. Liam squinted. There was something familiar about her walk, something about the tilt of her head. She reached the bottom of the stairs and looked up, her face projected onto the massive screens on either side of the stage. Liam stopped breathing. The glass of champagne slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. Jessica jumped. Liam! What the hell? But Liam couldn't hear her. He couldn't hear the music. He couldn't feel his legs. Because the woman on the screen, the trillion-dollar heiress, the most powerful woman in the room, was Oprah, and she was looking directly at table 4. The ballroom was spinning. Or perhaps it was just Liam's mind, unable to latch onto the reality in front of him. On the massive screens, Oprah Serafina was smiling. It wasn't the shy, apologetic smile she used to give him when she forgot to buy milk. It was a smile that could launch armies or destroy economies. Liam, pick up your glass, Jessica hissed, digging her nails into his bicep. You're making a scene. Why are you staring at her like you've seen a ghost? I know her, Liam croaked. His throat felt like it was filled with sand. Everyone knows her, you idiot. She's a Rothschild, Jessica whispered furiously, scanning the room to see if anyone noticed Liam's clumsiness. Just shut up and look rich. Serafina moved away from the podium. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. She didn't walk toward the head table where the politicians and royalty sat. She walked straight toward table 4. Liam's heart hammered against his ribs like a trapped bird. Run, his instinct screamed. Get up and run. But he was frozen. She stopped right in front of them. Up close, the transformation was even more terrifying. Her skin glowed with the kind of health that only billions of dollars and private chefs could buy. The fraying cardigan was replaced by diamonds that were likely worth more than the entire Stratton Oakmont building. Good evening, she said. Her voice was velvet wrapped around a razor blade. Jessica practically launched herself out of her chair. Miss Rothschild, it is such an honor. I'm Jessica Thorne. My father is Richard Thorne, of Thorne Global. We've been dying to meet you. Serafina didn't even look at Jessica. Her eyes, those deep, brown doe eyes that Liam used to find boring, were locked onto Liam. And you must be Liam, she said. Liam stood up, his legs shaking. Oprah, Miss, you can call me Serafina, she said coolly. Oprah was a pseudonym, a little social experiment I was conducting. I wanted to see how the common man lives, how they love, how they betray. The table went silent. Jessica looked from Serafina to Liam, her eyes widening. Wait, you know him? Serafina finally glanced at Jessica, offering a pitying smile. Know him? We lived together for 3 years. I washed his socks. I cooked his pasta. I believe I even loaned him rent money on occasion. Jessica gasped, pulling her hand away from Liam's arm as if he were contagious. You dated the Rothschild heiress? And you didn't tell me? He didn't know, Serafina said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He thought I was just a boring little archivist. Isn't that right, Liam? You thought I was a Honda? Liam flinched. The word hung in the air. The people at the nearby tables, CEOs, actors, senators, were starting to listen. I didn't mean, Liam stammered. Oh, you meant it, Serafina laughed softly. She reached into her clutch, a small, diamond-encrusted object, and pulled out a piece of paper. It was wrinkled. It was the check for $5,000. You gave me this, she said, holding it up. Severance pay. For 3 years of my life. You told me to keep it because I would need it. She ripped the check in half. Then in quarters, she let the confetti pieces flutter down onto Liam's plate of untouched filet mignon. I don't need your money, Liam. In fact, I bought your building this morning. Did you know that? Stratton Oakmont is now a subsidiary of the Serafina Trust. Liam's knees gave out. He sat back down hard. Enjoy the gala, Serafina said, turning her back on him. I hear the champagne is Dom Perignon, real champagne. Try not to choke on it. She walked away, the train of her gown sweeping the floor. Liam sat in the ruins of his ego. He felt the eyes of the room on him. He turned to Jessica, looking for an anchor. Jessica, he pleaded. Jessica stood up. She looked at him with pure disgust. You dated her, and you dumped her? For me? Babe, I didn't know. You are the stupidest man I have ever met, she hissed. She grabbed her purse. Don't follow me. I need to go apologize to her. I need to distance myself from you before you ruin my social standing. Jessica. She walked away, leaving him alone at the VIP table. A waiter approached, looking at the torn check on Liam's plate. Are you finished with that, sir? The waiter asked dryly. Liam looked at the confetti. It was the only money he had left. The next morning, Liam didn't go into work. He couldn't. He lay in bed in the penthouse, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night over and over. But at 8 a.m., his phone rang. It was the CEO's secretary. Mr. Carter, your presence is required in the main boardroom immediately. Attendance is mandatory for all senior management. Is it about the merger? Liam asked, his voice shaking. Just get here, Liam. He showered, dressed in his best suit, though it felt like a costume now, and drove to the office. The atmosphere at Stratton Oakmont was frantic. People were running around with boxes. Shredders were humming. When he walked into the boardroom, the air was freezing. The long mahogany table was full. The CEO, Mr. Henderson, looked pale. At the head of the table, in the chair's seat, sat Serafina. She was wearing a sharp white power suit that made her look like a modern-day angel of death. Next to her was Arthur, the British security head, looking menacing. Sit down, Liam, Serafina said, not looking up from a file she was reading. Liam took the only empty seat at the far end, opposite her. The distance felt like miles. As you all know, Serafina began, closing the file, my family has acquired this firm. We are restructuring. We are cutting the fat. She looked directly at Liam. We have been auditing the accounts of the prospective vice presidents. Mr. Carter, we found some interesting discrepancies in your expense reports. Liam's blood ran cold. That's standard practice. Everyone expenses client dinners. Client dinners? Serafina nodded. And weekends in the Hamptons? Jewelry purchases listed as office supplies? A lease on a penthouse listed as corporate housing? Jessica said, it was okay, Liam blurted out, throwing his girlfriend under the bus without hesitation. Jessica Thorne doesn't work here, Serafina said calmly. You do, and this constitutes embezzlement. The room gasped. Mr. Henderson looked at Liam with betrayal. Liam, is this true? It's a misunderstanding. It's theft, Serafina corrected. However, I am a benevolent owner. I am not going to fire you, Liam. Liam let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Thank you, Oprah. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she smiled. I'm not firing you, because if I fire you, I have to pay you a severance package. And as you know, I don't like wasting money on bad investments. Instead, you are being reassigned. She slid a single piece of paper down the long table. It slid all the way to Liam. Reassigned? Liam looked at the paper. Position, Junior Data Entry Clerk. Location, Archive Basement B. You said I was small, Serafina said, her voice echoing in the silent room. You said my work in the archives was for drudges. So, I think it's only fair you learn the trade. You will report to the basement immediately. Your salary has been adjusted to minimum wage. Your expense account is revoked. And if you quit, we will hand over the evidence of embezzlement to the FBI. You'll go to prison for 10 years. She leaned forward. So, what will it be, Liam? The basement or the cell? Liam looked around the room. His colleagues, the men he drank with, the rivals he mocked, were all looking at him with a mixture of horror and amusement. He was trapped. She owned him. I'll take the basement, he whispered. Excellent, Serafina clapped her hands once. Arthur, please escort Mr. Carter to his new office. Make sure he doesn't steal any staplers on the way down. As Arthur grabbed Liam by the arm, dragging him out of the boardroom, Liam looked back. Serafina wasn't even watching him anymore. She was already talking to the CEO about global markets. He was already forgotten. The basement of Stratton Oakmont existed outside of time. There were no windows to show the sun setting, only the ceaseless, headache-inducing buzz of fluorescent tube lights that flickered with a dying yellow hue. The air here was different from the 45th floor. Up there, the air smelled of conditioned oxygen, expensive cologne, and fresh espresso. Down here, in Archive B, it smelled of damp cardboard, decaying paper, and the sharp, metallic tang of ozone from overheating scanners. Liam sat on a stool that was missing a caster, his knees hitting the underside of a metal desk that was scarred with the graffiti of bored interns from decades past. He was scanning financial records from 1998. Scan, beep, save, next. It was a rhythm that was slowly pulverizing his soul. Pick up the pace, Carter, a voice barked. It was Gary, the floor supervisor. Gary was a man who wore short-sleeved dress shirts and had a permanent stain of mustard on his tie. 2 days ago, Liam wouldn't have even looked at a man like Gary. Now, Gary held the keys to his freedom. I'm going as fast as I can, Liam muttered, his voice hoarse. He hadn't had water in 4 hours because the water cooler was broken, and he was too proud to ask where the bathroom tap was. Not fast enough, Gary sneered, tapping his clipboard. The Serafina Trust wants the Q3 archives digitized by Friday. You're currently lagging by 400 files. That's going to come out of your break time tomorrow. Liam gritted his teeth, the muscles in his jaw jumping. He wanted to scream. He wanted to throw the scanner through the drywall, but he couldn't. The memory of Serafina's voice in the boardroom was too fresh. Embezzlement, federal prison, 40 years. She had built a cage of gold and laws around him, and he was trapped. When the clock finally clicked to 6 p.m., Liam didn't walk out. He fled. He took the service elevator up to the lobby, avoiding the main glass lifts where his former colleagues might see him. He slipped out the side door into the alley, emerging into the gray, weeping drizzle of the New York evening. He reached into his pocket for his phone to call an Uber Black, a reflex he hadn't yet unlearned. Then he remembered. His credit cards were frozen. His corporate account was revoked. He pulled up the collar of his suit jacket, the only one he hadn't sold yet, and began to walk. It was 40 blocks to the Four Seasons. By the time he reached the gilded awning of the hotel, he was soaked to the bone. His Italian leather shoes squelched with every step, a humiliating sound that announced his downfall before he even spoke. He walked to the front desk, trying to summon the arrogance of the vice president he used to be. Key for penthouse B, he said to the concierge, a man named Henri, who had greeted him by name every day for 3 months. Henri didn't smile. He didn't reach for a key. He looked at Liam with a mixture of professional detachment and personal pity. Mr. Carter, Henri said softly, I'm afraid I cannot grant you access. What do you mean? Liam snapped, though his voice wavered. I live there. Not anymore, sir. The leaseholder, Miss Jessica Thorne, contacted management this morning. The lease has been terminated, effective immediately. The locks have been changed. The world tilted. Terminated? But my things, my clothes, my laptop. Miss Thorne requested that the apartment be cleared, Henri said, sliding a small cardboard box across the marble counter. She left this for you, the rest of your personal effects. Well, she directed the cleaning staff to dispose of them. Liam stared at the box. It was a shoebox. His entire life reduced to a shoebox. Dispose of them? Liam whispered. My watches? My suits? I believe the charity truck came at 3 p.m., sir. Liam grabbed the box, his hands shaking so violently he almost dropped it. He turned away from the counter, ignoring the whispers of the bellhops, and walked out of the hotel. He couldn't even sit in the lobby. He was a trespasser in his own life. He found a dry spot under a bus stop shelter, 2 blocks away. He sat on the cold metal bench, shivering, and opened the box. Inside, there was a single tube of toothpaste, a phone charger, and a letter. It wasn't handwritten. It was typed on Stratton Oakmont letterhead, a final, petty twist of the knife. Liam, I spoke to my father. He made it very clear that the Thorne family brand cannot be associated with a man under investigation for internal theft. It's simply bad PR. Also, I had lunch with Serafina today. Or should I say, Miss Rothschild. She is charming, really. She explained the situation to me. She told me how you used her, how you used me. It was an enlightening conversation. She offered me a position in her foundation's public relations division. It's a global role, Liam. Paris, Milan, Tokyo. I'm leaving tonight. I realized that while you were climbing the ladder, you were actually just a weight dragging me down. Don't try to contact me. My number has changed. And don't look for the engagement ring I bought you. I returned it. I used the store credit to buy a new Birkin bag. It seemed like a better investment. Goodbye, Liam. You always wanted to be unforgettable. Congratulations. You're now a cautionary tale. Yes. Liam crumpled the letter. A guttural roar built up in his chest, tearing through his throat. He screamed, a raw, animalistic sound that made pedestrians across the street stop and stare. He threw the box into the gutter. Used me? He shouted at the rain. She used me? Everyone used me? He sat there for an hour, the anger burning itself out, until only a cold, hollow dread remained. He had nothing. No job, no home, no girlfriend, no money. He was back to where he started, only worse. When he was with Oprah, he was poor but hopeful. Now, he was poor and stained. But as the rain relentlessly pounded the pavement, a strange, twisted logic began to take root in his mind. It started as a flicker of denial and grew into a blazing inferno of delusion. He thought about the meeting in the boardroom. She didn't fire me, he thought. She could have called the police right then and there. She could have had me arrested in front of everyone. But she didn't. Why? Why keep him in the basement? Why keep him in her building? Because she can't let me go, the voice in his head whispered. It's obsession. That's what it is. He stood up and began to pace the small length of the bus stop. The narrative in his head shifted. He wasn't the victim anymore. He was the protagonist of a twisted romance. She's hurt, he reasoned. I broke her heart. Of course she's lashing out. She's a Rothschild. She has the power to destroy worlds, so she's using that power to get my attention. This isn't punishment. It's a test. He laughed, a manic, breathless sound. She wants to see if I'll break, he said aloud. She wants to see if I'm just another gold digger who will run away when things get hard. She stripped me of everything, Jessica, the money, the apartment, to see what was left, to see if I was still there. If he stayed in the basement, he was admitting defeat. He was accepting the role of the servant. But if he went to her, if he showed her that he wasn't afraid of her money or her anger, she's waiting for me, he decided, the delusion now fully formed and solid as concrete. This is the grand gesture. She wants me to fight for her. He checked his pockets. He still had the keys to the company car, a sleek, black BMW that was parked in the hotel garage. The repo order probably hadn't gone through yet. He had a few hours. He ran back to the hotel garage, dodging the valet, and found the car. He got in, the smell of leather calming him instantly. This was where he belonged, not on a bus bench, not in a basement. He punched the address into the GPS. Blackwood Estate, upstate New York. The drive took 2 hours. He spent every minute of it rehearsing his speech. He wouldn't beg. No, begging was weak. He would be firm. He would tell her that he forgave her for the humiliation. He would tell her that he understood why she did it, and that he was ready to take his place by her side. He would remind her of the nights they spent eating takeout on the floor of their old apartment. He would weaponize their nostalgia. By the time he reached the massive iron gates of the Rothschild estate, the rain had stopped, leaving a heavy mist clinging to the trees. The house sat on a hill, a fortress of stone and light. Liam rolled down the window and pressed the intercom button. His heart was hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Liam Carter, he announced to the camera. I'm here to see Serafina. He expected a rejection. He expected the police. Instead, the gate clicked. The heavy iron bars swung inward silently. Liam smirked. See? He thought triumphantly. She let me in. She knew I would come. He drove up the winding driveway, the gravel crunching under his tires like applause. He parked in front of the massive oak doors and stepped out. He smoothed his wet hair, buttoned his damp jacket, and walked up the steps. The doors opened before he could knock. Liam prepared his smile, the charming, boyish smile that had won Oprah over 3 years ago, but the smile froze on his face. It wasn't Serafina standing there. It was a man. He was tall, with the kind of effortless, athletic build that came from polo matches and rowing crew. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin. He held a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in one hand, looking at Liam with an expression of mild curiosity, as if he were observing a particularly muddy stray dog. "Can I help you?" the man asked. His voice was deep, cultured, and utterly dismissive. Liam blinked. I'm here to see Serafina. I'm a friend. An old friend." "An old friend," the man repeated, swirling his drink. "You must be Liam, the Honda enthusiast." Liam stiffened. "Who are you?" "I'm Julian," the man said, stepping aside to reveal the grand hallway behind him. "I'm her fiancé." The word hit Liam like a physical blow. "Fiancé? That's a lie," Liam blurted out, the desperation cracking his voice. "She doesn't love anyone else. She's doing this to make me jealous. She kept me at the bank because she wants me." Julian laughed. It wasn't a cruel laugh, which made it worse. It was a genuine, hearty chuckle. "Oh, mate. You really believe that, don't you? That is fascinating." Julian took a sip of his drink and looked Liam up and down. "She kept you at the bank because she finds you amusing, Liam. You're her favorite new toy. A little stress ball she can squeeze whenever she gets bored." "Let me see her," Liam demanded, stepping forward. "I know she wants to see me." Julian shrugged, a gesture of pure indifference. "By all means, come in. We were just opening a bottle of the 82 Latour. You're just in time for the toast." He opened the door wider. "But a word of advice, Liam," Julian said, his eyes turning cold. "The woman in there isn't Oprah. Oprah was a character she played. The woman in there is Serafina Rothschild, and she doesn't do second chances. She does executions." Liam ignored him. He walked past Julian, stepping onto the black and white marble floor of the foyer. He felt the warmth of the house, the smell of wealth, and the pull of his own destruction. He walked toward the sound of laughter in the next room, convincing himself with every step that he was walking toward a reunion, blind to the fact that he was walking onto the chopping block. The grand salon of the Blackwood estate was less a room and more a cathedral dedicated to the worship of old money. The ceiling soared 30 feet high, frescoed with scenes of Greek mythology that looked suspiciously like originals. The walls were lined with portraits of ancestors who had likely financed wars and bailed out monarchies. Crystal chandeliers, massive and dripping with light, cast a warm, golden glow over a crowd that didn't just have net worths. They had GDPs. Liam stepped onto the Persian rug, his wet Italian loafers leaving dark, muddy prints on the intricate silk weave. He felt the sudden, oppressive silence as the hum of conversation died. The air smelled of expensive scotch, freesias, and the terrifying scent of absolute power. He scanned the room, his eyes darting frantically. He saw a senator he recognized from CNN. He saw a tech mogul who had just bought an island in the Pacific. And in the center of them all, radiating a gravitational pull that bent the room around her, was Serafina. She had changed since the gala. The blue velvet was gone. Tonight, she wore a gown of liquid white silk that clung to her frame like a second skin, backless and daring, shimmering under the lights. Her hair was loose, cascading in dark waves down her back. She looked untouchable. She looked like a goddess who had descended to earth solely to be worshipped. She was laughing at something an older man, her grandfather, the patriarch, had said. Her hand rested lightly, possessively, on the arm of Julian, who stood beside her like a sentinel carved from marble. "Serafina," Julian's voice cut through the silence. It wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of authority. "We have a straggler. He claims to be an old friend." Serafina turned. The movement was slow, deliberate. When her eyes landed on Liam, the warmth in them vanished instantly. It was like watching a candle be snuffed out in a vacuum. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. "Liam," she said, her voice smooth and devoid of emotion, I didn't think your Honda could make it up the driveway. A ripple of polite, cruel laughter moved through the room. Liam felt the heat rise in his cheeks, but he pushed it down. This was the test. She was testing his resolve. Oprah, Serafina, Liam started, his voice cracking. He took a step forward. Two massive security guards in the corner tensed, but Serafina raised a single, manicured hand to stop them. Let him speak, she said. I enjoy theater. We need to talk, Liam said, his hands shaking at his sides. Alone, please. Just give me 5 minutes to explain. I have no secrets from my family, Liam, she said, gesturing to the room with a sweep of her champagne glass. Or from my fiancé. Speak your piece. Liam looked at Julian, who was watching him with a smirk of pure pity. He looked at the crowd. He realized he had no choice. He had to make the grand gesture here, in front of everyone. I know why you're doing this, Liam said, his voice gaining a desperate strength. You're angry. I get it. I hurt you. I was an idiot, Oprah. I let the city, the job, the pressure, I let it all get to me. But you kept me at the bank. You didn't fire me. You didn't have me arrested. He took another step, entering her personal space. She didn't flinch. She just watched him, her expression unreadable. You kept me because you still care, Liam whispered, the delusion spilling out of him. You want me to prove that I'm not just another suit. You stripped me of everything. The money, the apartment, Jessica, to see if I'd still come back for you. Well, I'm here. I'm at the bottom, Oprah. I'll work in the basement. I'll scrub the floors. I'll do whatever it takes to earn you back. Because I know deep down, the girl who used to dance in the kitchen with me is still in there. He dropped to his knees. It was a move he had rehearsed in the car. He lowered his head, a portrait of penitence, waiting for her hand to touch his shoulder, waiting for the forgiveness that always came in the movies. The silence in the room was absolute. It stretched for 1 second, 2, 3, and then a sound broke it. It was laughter, but it wasn't the polite, cruel laughter of the guests. It was Serafina. She was laughing a bright, genuine, bubbling sound of pure amusement. She laughed until she had to hand her glass to Julian to wipe a tear from her eye. Oh, Liam, she sighed, shaking her head. You really are a narcissist, aren't you? You truly believe the world is a story written about you. Liam looked up, confused. What? Serafina stopped laughing. Her face went cold, sharp as a diamond cutter. She walked over to him, her heels clicking rhythmically on the parquet floor. She crouched down, her white dress pooling around her, bringing her face level with his. I didn't keep you at the bank because I love you, she whispered, her voice soft enough that only he could hear, yet heavy enough to crush him. I kept you because I own you. Liam blinked, his brain struggling to process the words. Own me? The embezzlement, she said simply. The audit we ran on your accounts? You and Jessica charged over $400,000 to the company cards. Personal trips, dinners, handbags, watches. That's grand larceny, Liam. Federal crime. Mandatory minimum sentencing of 10 years in a maximum security prison. Liam went pale. But, you said I could work it off. You said I could pay it back. Exactly, Serafina smiled. And it was the most terrifying thing he had ever seen. And do you know the math on that, Liam? Do you know how long it takes a junior data entry clerk on minimum wage to pay back $400,000 plus interest? Liam stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. 40 years, Serafina whispered. You are going to spend the next 40 years in that basement. You are going to scan my family's receipts. You are going to file our taxes. You are going to document every cent of the wealth you will never, ever touch. She leaned in closer, her eyes boring into his soul. You are my indentured servant, Liam. If you quit, I send the file to the FBI. If you are late, I send the file to the FBI. If you try to run, my lawyers who make the DOJ look like a debate club will find you, and you will rot in a cell. She stood up, towering over him, regaining her full height and power. You wanted a life of stability? I gave it to you. You have a steady job for the rest of your life. You wanted to be close to money? You'll be swimming in the records of it, but you will never hold it again. She turned her back on him. The dismissal was absolute. "Julian," she said, her voice bored. "Get him out of here. He's ruining the aesthetic." Two massive hands grabbed Liam by the shoulders. He was hauled to his feet, his legs useless jelly. As they dragged him backward, his heels scuffing the beautiful floor, he began to scream. "Oprah! Oprah! Please! You can't do this! I love you." Serafina didn't look back. She took her glass from Julian and raised it high. "To the future," she toasted, her voice ringing clear as a bell. "To the future," the room roared back, a chorus of victors drowning out the cries of the defeated. The heavy oak doors slammed shut in Liam's face. The lock clicked with a finality that echoed in his bones. He was left standing in the rain, the darkness of the estate swallowing him whole. 6 months later, the basement of Stratton Oakmont was a tomb for the living. Archive B had no natural light, no fresh air, and no hope. The walls were lined with floor-to-ceiling metal shelves, packed tight with dusty banker's boxes that smelled of rot. Liam sat at a small, rusted metal desk in the corner. His suit was a distant memory. He wore a cheap, ill-fitting polo shirt and khaki pants that were fraying at the hem. His hair was thinning. Dark circles had permanently settled under his eyes. He looked 10 years older than the man who had walked into Joe's diner to break a girl's heart. Beep, scan, beep, scan. He picked up a document. It was a receipt for a private jet charter from 2018. Cost $45,000. He typed the numbers into the ancient computer. His fingers were calloused from paper cuts. His phone buzzed on the desk. It was strictly forbidden to have phones in the archive, but it was his only lifeline to the world he had lost. A notification flashed on the cracked screen. Instagram. Serafina Rothschild posted a new photo. Liam's hand hovered over the device. He knew he shouldn't look. Looking was torture. Looking was the only thing he felt anymore. He tapped the notification. The photo filled the screen. It was taken on the deck of a yacht in Monaco. The Mediterranean Sea was a blinding, impossible blue behind them. Serafina stood at the rail, looking more radiant and free than he had ever seen her. The wind was whipping her hair back, and she was laughing that same genuine laugh he had heard at the estate. Next to her was Julian. He had his arms wrapped around her waist, his chin resting on her shoulder. On Serafina's finger sat a diamond the size of a grape, a yellow diamond, rare and priceless. The caption was simple: "Found my equal. Number forever." Liam stared at the image. He zoomed in on her face. He looked for a trace of the girl in the fraying cardigan. He looked for Oprah. She wasn't there. Oprah was dead. He had killed her, and Serafina had risen from the grave to bury him. A tear leaked from his eye and hit the screen, distorting the image of the happy couple. "Carter!" The sharp bark of Gary, the floor supervisor, made Liam jump. "Stop looking at pictures of the boss and get back to work," Gary sneered from the doorway. "You're behind quota. And remember, you still owe $398,000. Liam quickly wiped the phone screen and shoved it into his pocket. He picked up the next document from the stack. It was a receipt for a dinner at Le Bernardin, a dinner for two. Vintage champagne, caviar. He stared at the numbers. He picked up the scanner. Beep. He started typing. And so, Liam learned the hardest lesson of all. When you treat people like stepping stones, don't be surprised when you slip and fall. He spent his life chasing gold, only to realize he had thrown away the only treasure that truly mattered. Now, he's not climbing the corporate ladder, he's buried underneath it, paying the price for his arrogance one receipt at a time, a prisoner in a cage of his own making. What do you think? Did Serafina take her revenge too far? Or did Liam get exactly what he deserved? Was this justice, or was it cruelty? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Type Team Serafina if you think she's a queen, or Team Mercy if you think 40 years is too harsh. If you enjoyed this story of karma, hidden identities, and ultimate revenge, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new drama. We drop new stories every week. Thanks for watching. And remember, be careful who you discard.